All right, we are live. Welcome back, everybody. I am here with NBA Scout, or should I say former NBA Scout or NBA Scout? What do you think? With NBA Scout Bryan Oringher. He's worked for the Atlanta Hawks, the Washington Wizards, the Toronto Raptors, and one of the sharpest guys on Twitter, especially NBA Twitter. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate you having me.
I do want to clarify. I should still say NBA scout because you're still scouting. We look at your tweets and your tweets are totally
Current NBA media, former scout. I don't have an ego about it, but yeah, I spent 7 years in the NBA, like you said, for those three teams. So definitely a lot of experience in the field.
well. When people get a chance to take a look at your tweets, if they haven't already, they'll see it immediately. One of the sharpest NBA minds, and what I like about you is you're not afraid to absolutely drop the hammer on people that are saying nonsense. A lot of sports media, everybody just likes to hype up everything, hype up every single thing, but you're one that's based in reality, which I particularly enjoy.
I appreciate it. Yeah, there's that's the culture now. It's these Bleacher Reports and House of Highlights, and everybody. You see more of the dunks and athletic plays than you do of actually who won the games. It's like we devalue what's actually important in favor of these 3-second highlight snippets. And, it's kind of an example of just culture and how we cover everything today. Media and everything is about, guy says something stupid in a 5-second snippet that'll overshadow, a 3-hour press conference where plenty of intelligent things were said or whatever it is. Yeah, it's just incredibly prevalent in sports media, NBA in particular. And, yeah, I've enjoyed calling some of it out so far.
Yeah, you're talking about a lack of integrity in media, and I think we see this both in sports media and in political media. Before we get to political media, I want to ask you, can you tell us a little about your experience seeing a lack of integrity in sports media?
Yeah, sure. So the main way that I kind of rose, I guess, to mainstream awareness on Twitter, before my kind of niche following was, I tweeted something that in hindsight was tone deaf, but it was a legitimate, real experience I had, which was that, when I worked for the Wizards, I played pickup with some WNBA players, and what I said was, I held my own in those games. I didn't say I was incredible. I didn't mean it, to discredit them or anything. It was just meant to be an anecdotal story. And as soon as I tweeted that, it got thousands of accounts retweeting it and calling me the worst person on earth and dragging me through the mud and just absolutely tearing into me with no idea who I was, or 90% of them misinterpreted the tweet anyway, or thought I was saying that I could literally beat WNBA players one-on-one, or that I made up some story or whatever. No, it was just literally what had happened, a real story I was involved with. And then ever since then, I mean, like I said, there were so many blue checks that were sharing it, and in particular, SB Nation, which is a Vox company, had the girl who initially I was responding to is somebody named Natalie Weiner, who covers the WNBA for them. And she had posted something like, and now Scout Bryan angrily DM'd me a bunch of hate things, and I never DM'd her. I didn't say a word to her. And I even heard that, and then she wrote something back like, oh, sorry, I had a bunch of DMs show up and I didn't get a chance to look at it. I just assumed it was you. I was like, are you seriously? She publicly accused me of hate DMing you and you didn't even look at it. And then after that, after she even admitted that, she ends up blocking me and then also accusing me of like using a burner to email her, which I also hadn't done. Never did, do not do. Yeah. So she did that. I had another SB Nation writer accuse me of like DMing people, encouraging them to kill themselves, which I never did and would never do, and have tremendous appreciation for mental health and how messed up that would be. And so I just kind of saw a pattern of that over and over with that company, with a few of those companies. And then it just kind of lets you see how many of those, give out blue checks so freely and give them to 20-year-old insecure kids who have no credentials or accountability. They're not carefully watched. There's no quality control. There's nobody to complain to when something like that even happens. I tried, bringing it up to the higher ups at SB Nation, whatever. Nobody even gives a crap. So yeah, I mean, it's embarrassing the level of like quality control there, and it was kind of eye opening for me. to kind of reevaluate like how I looked at media as a whole. When you saw how easy it is for people without integrity or without experience or with agendas or whatever it is to get these huge platforms because they have this illusion of integrity or authority or whatever it is, from having a blue check.
That's so wild. For people that don't know, I mean, this type of total lack of integrity, this type of unaccountability, it's not just sports media. It is the whole media. It is the whole corporate media. When you say, Bleacher Report, or excuse me, Sports Nation being a Vox company, and this is what they do. Yeah, it's what they do to everybody, not just in sports, but it's awesome. It's awe-inspiring, not in a good way, but just to see this is how they behave, for people to understand, like, this is the type of lies that you say that you held your own against WNBA players. So then some blue check, Vox employed writers go out and say that you were sending them hate DMs. That's just that's astounding.
And I forgot to even mention too. I mean, not to I wasn't badly hurt or anything, so I don't want to cry victim or anything. But them spewing lies about me or making up things that I never said. What that ends up doing is galvanizing hate mobs against me. And so a huge portion of those thousands of quote tweets and everything that I got, I get hundreds of DMs telling me to kill myself or posting pictures of me with a clown or, just saying disgusting, terrible things. And it's just such a toxic, negative, awful culture. And these are, the people that are supposed woke and that are so culturally sensitive that they can't tolerate somebody telling a factual story about an experience playing with women's basketball players, and yeah, it was very eye-opening and very scary for sure.
That's the media ginning up outrage mobs based on just total lies. You're the Nick Sandman of sports media, bro. How do you feel?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just like the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I can't tell. I know you've been, following me for a while, and I appreciate your kind words. But there's so many things. I don't even know if you remember, but there was somebody that made an account. It was called Vulgar Bay Fan or something, and they were pretending to be my burner. They were, they'd come to my defense, but they were doing it in absolutely ridiculous ways, like saying, how many of you like Brian can claim you brought women back to the operations annex with the Wizards and had Apple smartwatches and got so many girls from that. It was actually legitimately funny to me, but the person was very obviously trolling, he was totally just mocking me, which was fine and I thought funny. The problem was thousands of people legitimately thought this was a real burner of mine, in large part because, like I said, a lot of those SB Nation people somehow fell for it. This woman, Julia Fayer, I think, that had a blue check and 100,000 followers from The Ringer, literally posted it saying that Scout Bryan, he just unveiled himself as this burner account. Because what happened was the person had DM'd me or something, and then I took a screenshot and posted it out to show people that obviously I didn't freaking DM myself. This isn't me. And that troll then took that same DM and posted it himself to say, posting this to show that I'm not Scout with Brian. But of course, when he posts it, it looks like it comes from, it flips who's the blue one, who's the gray one, whatever. So when he posted it looked like he's telling the truth. But, he literally had taken a picture that I already shared it himself, and then that thing goes viral from The Ringer and SB Nation and all these people. And yeah, I mean, it just shows you how quick they are, like you said, like the Nick Salmon thing, to just virally, end somebody's life in 5 seconds, or even the woman, in New York, who obviously did a terrible thing and shouldn't have done that, but nobody knows anything, about her before this, and it's a 70-second clip, probably the worst 70 seconds of her life, and now her life's effectively over, not to defend what she did, and it was disgusting and totally unacceptable, but yeah, I just hate this culture where, like you mentioned, we don't even take the time to make sure something's true. There's
What's amazing about this is, I mean, you'll find that the political leanings of people that watch certain sports channels, certain sports networks, it's all divided at this point. Like people that are, left leaning, this is now the core audience of ESPN. So many people have jumped ship from ESPN and Bleacher Report, Sports Nation, because they're putting their politics into their sports reporting. So these people are jumping ship to people like Clay Travis, to Barstool Sports. Like people are finding people that are just not putting in like total leftist insanity into the sports mix. And what's hilarious to me is the people that were attacking you, like the Ringer, which is Bill Simmons's operation. Like these are big leftist people. They'll talk all day. They'll presume that they're the intelligent ones in society. Yet they're the ones pushing the hoaxes, pushing the lies. Even when it comes to sports, they can't get a single story right.
Yeah, I think it's widespread, and people love to comment on, yes, Trump has shared fake things and conspiracy theories, and he's lied at times, but at the same time, we know who he is, right? Like he's a politician. Politicians have been lying for hundreds of years. His goal is somewhat selfish. It's to get reelected, right? Like politicians are out for self-preservation. We know that. Journalists, on the other hand, are supposed to be, neutral, just providers of information almost. They're supposed to report the news, right? And so much of it has become, they just have massive grudges against Trump, or he embarrasses them, or they don't like, the way they were treated in a press conference or whatever it is. So it becomes all about, pushing a narrative, or CNN has a massive investment from China, and there's so many other things that muddy the waters. So it's like, it becomes a game of literally, you don't know who to trust anymore. And it's funny you say like ESPN, and the other thing that just came to my mind when you said that is, what's funny is the leadership at ESPN seems to realize that they shouldn't be getting all that political, because they recognize that a lot of sports fans and a lot of their base in general, doesn't totally agree with that. And they've come out and said before that, like, no, we don't want to take these stands on sports. We want on politics. Sorry, we want to stick to sports. And people like Jameel Hill or Clay Travis at the other end, when they speak out, they get pushed out. So it's interesting, the few people that have tried to still do it regardless and not listen to them, and they've kind of been silenced.
Imagine being the number one outlet for sports highlights. People go to you every morning. They want to see basketball. They want to see football. They want to see baseball clips. Imagine having that massive machine. I remember I used to watch SportsCenter every morning. Imagine having that and messing it up. How they messed it up, and they took the sports out of sports, and they thought people would still be interested, is amazing. Somehow MTV took the music out of music, and they still were able to brainwash people into watching it for some amount of time. And they took the news out of news with CNN, and people have stopped watching that like crazy. But ESPN, to take the sports out of sports, what do they think they're left with that we're going to watch? We're going to watch them talk all day and tell us what to think and give us your Jamel Hill opinions. Nobody wants to see Jamel Hill on SportsCenter, which is why they had to take her off. But they tried real hard to push her on us,
Right. Yeah, and that's like, the nature, and the other thing that I kind of just rail against in general with my platform and, my takes is that, I mean, it's very obvious in sports who are the highest paid personalities, who get the most views, are the Cowherds and Baylesses and, the people that literally just don't believe a word that they're saying. They just get on there and spout hot takes and nonsense, and they've even admitted it. Cowherd and guys like that have even said, like, I don't believe half the crap I'm saying. So yeah, you just like kind of extrapolate that to that's kind of like how I see, honestly, that like, a huge deal of political coverage is trending, right? Is, like Chris Cuomo gets up and, pretends to be this ultimate moral character and gets up there so sternly and tells people what to do, but behind the scenes, he's out violating quarantine and, gets his family infected and pretends to have this triumphant return from quarantine. And, it's just, and then they never talk about it. It's just hidden, like it never happened. So it's narratives. It's like, it's become theater.
Yeah, I think the outlets like CNN and MSNBC, the New York Times, they're just relying on their readers to never look at other sources of information because they can lie all day. Chris Cuomo can pretend that he didn't break quarantine when their viewers literally don't try and see what are the other people saying about the situation. They can delude their viewers as long as their viewers just keep, oh yes, yes, dear leader, tell me what to think. I will never look at any other sources of information and verify if what you're saying is true. So, at the end of the day, it's up to people to decide if they want to be deluded or not. And it's sad to see people still give any credibility to the Chris Cuomo's of the world. And speaking of which, I know I said in the title here we're going to talk about lockdowns, and that's the biggest thing right now. Is like you were pointing out. We were talking about this earlier. The media said, the experts said there was going to be 1 million deaths. The job was to flatten the curve. I think we flattened the curve. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly if you look at like the deaths, it's very much looking like a bell-shaped curve, right? We had our peak, and now we're on the downswing. There's 3 straight days of like in the 600s or whatever, which is very encouraging, right? And yeah, I mean, we came from at the beginning. The goal, like you said, was flatten the curve, social distance, 15 days to slow the spread, whatever, and it became 15, then 30, then 60, and seemingly the goal is like no end in sight because you've got people like Joe Biden tweeting, not a single death is acceptable, which is a great sounds great in middle school, but it's not remotely practical. And if we operate like that, we'll be shut down the next 15 years,
Shut down the highways. People can't drive anymore. A single death is unacceptable. No more driving on the highway. No more skiing. Some people die sometimes skiing. No more basketball. I'm sure someone's died playing basketball once, right?
Yeah. No more fast food. No more anything. Yeah. So yes. I mean, every time you say something like this, people think you're callous or just want to kill grandma or, whatever. And 100,000 deaths is awful. But again, like you said, 40,000 people do die in the country every year from car accidents. If we literally change the speed limit to 5 miles an hour, I would think that number would be fractional, if anybody. Car accidents aren't contagious, obviously. So yes, the danger with this was that it could have spiraled completely out of control and crippled our healthcare system, and the hospitals would be completely overloaded and so on. But ultimately, that didn't happen. It doesn't appear to be happening or have a real chance of happening anymore. And yeah, like you said, I forget what his name, Andy something, I think, but Obama's one of his healthcare guys that has a big platform literally said experts now expect millions of people to die of COVID because it wasn't contained in the country, and now we're at 100,000 and maybe hopefully we'll end up something around there, and it's looked at as this massive failure. It's been constant moving goalposts and
from millions of people to 100,000, and even that 100,000, you look at the data, they're including people that died from other causes. They're including people that they didn't die from coronavirus. They died with coronavirus. It doesn't matter what they died of. It's just, they also tested positive for coronavirus when they died. Right. So we attribute it as a coronavirus death.
In Washington, Seattle or something, I think it was a very small number of people, but there was like 5 gunshot victims who tested positive for COVID. So they called this a COVID death, that were killed by a gunshot. I mean, it's beyond belief. And like you said, that they've considered all deaths, even from totally different things, and 90, 95-year-olds in nursing homes that, we don't have if we're not doing any sort of comparison to how many of them die on a regular basis in the U.S. anyway, it's like we just pretend that, oh, what do you think? There's 0 nursing home deaths daily in the United States? Like, it's a very old, vulnerable population. A lot of them are 95 years old. Like, those people, 8,000 people die in the country daily because we have a lot of old people.
Not just that. I mean, you look at what the governor of New York did. I'm signing an order, like ordering, nursing homes. You have to accept people that are infected with coronavirus. Anybody with even half a brain will be able to see. If you do that, You're going to send infected people with coronavirus into nursing homes. They're the most susceptible to this disease. And then like half the deaths in the country are basically tied to this order from New York's governor. And then they want to blame Trump for everything. He's not the one that signed this murderous, psychotic order. It was the governor of New York. But then he goes on CNN and his brother Chris Cuomo is the one to ask him questions. Give me a break.
Yeah, and he's the media darling, right? He's got this great approval rating, and because the media portrays him so favorably and as this, strong talking hero, when, it's almost without question that he's handled it worse than any other governor in the country. And yes, that decision was absolutely disastrous, and hardly anybody holds him accountable for it. If Trump had signed an order like that, he might be impeached immediately. It's just a terrible double standard, and it's heavily influenced by bias and agendas.
I think we'll talk a little bit more about lockdowns, but I promised the people some basketball talk. I got to ask you some basketball questions. Do you see any potential upsets in the playoffs? I think the NBA, I think they're going to resume within a month. Disney World is resuming. They're opening in July, I believe. So I think that's the facility that if they have no other place that they feel safe to play, they'll play at Disney World. And so that's like a month and a half away. The playoffs are going to come back. I don't know what you think. I've heard them toss around that they'll have maybe a short regular season. I think in the end they'll just decide to do maybe a short, like take the 7 through 12 seeds or 7 through 11 teams that were on the cusp, let them have a short season to determine who gets the 7-8 seeds, and then do the playoffs. So assuming that they let people get a chance to get into the playoffs, like the Trailblazers that currently would be out but could have a chance to play their way in, do you see any potential upsets in the playoffs?
I mean, I think when you have something this unusual and, all the teams have been off for so long, I think anything can happen to an extent. I mean, things are so weird that, it's going to be a factor, like which states have allowed players back in the gym sooner. There's some that still aren't, at least legally. So some of these teams have been working for months and practicing probably a little bit together and, staying in shape. And there's some that don't have a court in their home and haven't been able to do anything. I think it could be a little messy, but no, I mean, I still think most likely like the champion will be, from LA. I think the Lakers or Clippers are the clear best teams in the West. The Rockets could certainly make a push. I mean, Utah and Denver are really good teams, so it wouldn't shock me there. And then, I mean, in the East, Milwaukee I think is the clear favorite, but the tier right below them, which is Toronto, Boston, Miami, Indy, and probably Philly. I think any of those teams can beat Milwaukee. I don't think it's certainly not a guarantee, but I think all those teams are really competitive. And Milwaukee's fatal flaw is that Giannis's lack of a jump shot kind of hurts him, a lot in the playoffs. And Miami with Jimmy Butler and Iguodala and the veteran mix they have with the young guys there is a really good team. I think Indiana had a really good season without Victor Oladipo for a huge portion of it, and he was just coming back from injury. And and Toronto obviously won the East last year, and they lose Kawhi, but they've hardly lost a step statistically even without him. So I think it's a closer. I'd probably in the East go like 50-50 Milwaukee versus the field, but I think some people are assuming they'll have like a cakewalk to the finals, which I don't really see happening.
I think that's spot on too. Milwaukee, as good as they are, like you say, Giannis doesn't have a jump shot. I mean, I'm a Miami Heat fan, so I just watch. They pack the paint versus the guy, and they could put Bam Adebayo on him. So it's not like he's getting free runs to the basket. So then what's he got to do? He's got to pass out, and teams that have good defense on the perimeter, they can run those guys off the three-point line. So it's not going to be that easy for Milwaukee. I think that, like you say, there's at least a 50% chance, if not better, they get knocked off. If it's Boston, if it's Miami, I think there's a good chance somebody knocks them off.
Yeah, I agree. And I didn't even mention, Philly is like at the end of that, but, they might have Simmons and Embiid healthy now that they've had so much time to recover. And, the two of them healthy, obviously big bodies that can bother Giannis. Like you said, Bam's a really tough matchup for Giannis, and what a good coach Spo is. That, Milwaukee has – obviously, Giannis is a superstar, and Middleton's a really good player. But outside of that, they don't really have a third banana. They have Brook Lopez, who's been inconsistent shooting the ball this season. They have Bledsoe, who kind of fades in the playoffs a lot. So yeah, and Boston, like you said, Brad Stevens has done an amazing job this year. Tatum's made a huge leap. Kemba, I think, is a much better player than Kyrie was in that system. Just a much better teammate and fit. And they've made a huge jump and look like a Brad Stevens team again, like the type of gritty teams that he coaches. So yeah, I think they're definitely a threat, in the playoffs.
I was going to ask you who the most likely team to win the NBA title is. I think you already told us. You think it's the Lakers or the Clippers. I think it's the Clippers. I mean, we've seen already in their head-to-head matchups. And at the All-Star game, too, Kawhi is the guy you want at the end of the game to get it done. He just did it with the Raptors. Do you think it's going to be the Lakers or the Clippers?
Yeah, I mean, before the season, I think I had the Clippers 1, the Lakers 2. Those were my two best teams in the league, and I'm glad. A lot of people were down on the Lakers, so I'm glad. I was vindicated at least in thinking they're pretty good. I did not think they'd be clearly the best team like they have been so far, at least over the Clippers. But yeah, the Clippers haven't had really Kawhi and Paul George healthy together at the same time for a huge portion of the season. I think Kawhi is, like you said, the best player all around in the NBA when he's healthy. And you added Kawhi and Paul George to a team that won 48 games or something with Lou Williams and Harrell, and had a great challenge Golden State for a bit, in the first round of the playoffs last year. So yeah, I'd give them maybe a 51-49 edge, but I think LeBron obviously has a huge, extra chip on his shoulder, from the Last Dance even. And all that. Yeah, I mean, I think he knows he needs another championship, and even if he wins another couple championships, there'll still be, people that do everything they can to discredit him. But I think he'll be incredibly motivated that, if their Western Conference Finals, knock on wood, happens, it'll at least be, a 7-game classic series.
That's a great point. And I was thinking of it. You were like leading up to it while you're talking. I was like, oh, yeah, The Last Dance just dropped. It's Jordan like dropping the hammer and being like, hey, I'm the greatest of all time. LeBron hasn't got it done. And now this is like LeBron's chance. If he wants to shut up the world and be like, no, I am the greatest, he has to win this title. He has to come out of this tournament. Doesn't matter what the circumstances. If people remember after The Last Dance, LeBron went in, took out Kawhi, and won, he'll have a real argument for greatest of all time. If he loses this season, and I think this is probably his best chance for the rest of his career, if he doesn't win this, I think it'll forever be like Jordan over LeBron as the narrative. So he's got to come out swinging. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, no, I personally, I had him as the MVP this season before the shutdown. He was playing at 35, 36, averaging 10.5 assists, a career high. Playing out of his mind. And yes, he's got, Anthony Davis is a superstar, no question. But anybody that really watches the game closely and knows what they're seeing sees that, LeBron's the one handling the ball down the stretch. He's the one making the takeover plays generally at the end of games. He's the heart and soul of that team. And yeah, he was phenomenal this season, and I feel bad for him. But that's the other thing. Even if they do win it, people are going to place an asterisk next to it and say that, it wasn't a real season because, this happened. But yeah, it'll be for sure, if it's those two teams, an unbelievable series in the conference finals.
Yeah, I think that'll be like the real finals too. As much as I love my Heat, as much as there's some legit good teams in the East, whoever comes out of that Lakers-Clippers battle, it's gonna be the title, in my opinion. And I think that's just going to be such a great series. And they're not going to be playing in the first round. So it's not going to be like, oh, they're coming out with no, practice, no games whatsoever. There's going to be some lead up to that. So I don't think that they'll put such a big asterisk. I agree. Some people are always going to try and knock somebody down. They even try and knock down Tim Duncan's title that he won in the lockout shortened season in 2001 or whatever it was. So there'll always be haters. But I think if he comes out and takes out his biggest rival, Kawhi, there's not too much you can say because everybody says, like we're saying, Kawhi is the best all-around player. If LeBron beats him, it's hard to step to LeBron's legacy at that point.
For sure, I couldn't agree more. And like you said, if everybody could do it, rings would be kind of devalued. It's not easy. So anybody saying anything about any ring having an asterisk with it or being easy or whatever just has no idea. I mean, they either weren't alive or just didn't watch it closely, or just trolls, which is half the people in fanhood or anything today anyway. But yeah, it's unbelievably difficult. Lockout, no lockout, shortened season, whatever it is.
It's not easy to win like a YMCA or JCC league title. To win the NBA title, people need to put a little more respect on that. Yeah, for sure. Speaking of which, what do you think in the last 10 years? Who do you think is the best NBA of the last 10 years? I'm from Miami, so I would go with the 2012, 2013 Heat. But, you've seen the Warriors. You've seen all the great teams the last 10 years. Who do you think is the best team the last 10 years?
Are the Lakers last Kobe season eligible? Is that
2010? I think so. Yeah, I think you can put them in there.
Well, I think I think they have a great shot at it. I think the Warriors dynasty. I think consistency wise, they're obviously the best total team of the last 10 years. I think that the Spurs come back over the Heat series after that Ray Allen shot was just remarkable overall to look at big picture. So many people. Speaking of media narrative and people that don't know what they're talking about, we're all calling that team dead and time for Duncan to retire and Pop's, done and this team runs over. They lost their best chance and then they come back the next season and beat the Heat and, make everybody leave Miami basically. And, it was that team was incredible. So, yeah, I mean, the Heat with LeBron and Wade were incredibly tough too. So I know I probably just gave you about 4 teams in the past 10, so I'm not too good at narrowing it down to one. But
putting the respect on Kobe's name, which you got to put respect on Kobe's name, and the Warriors, obviously, that team with Durant and Curry was insane. Although I think they could have been taken out by the Rockets if they, if that series had gone another way with the refereeing and some other things. I think you could have seen a big upset with that Warriors team, but you still got to put them in the conversation. The team that you said that really was like, oh yeah, that Spurs team with young Kawhi and Tim Duncan still playing at a very high level, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Danny Green shooting lights out. They had a bunch of other shooters on that team. That's a serious team that they really are slept on. They demolished that Heat team. And that Heat team wasn't so done. Wade and Bosh were a little bit tired, but LeBron was in his absolute prime, and they just came out and smashed the Heat.
Yeah, and that was, the Heat talking about, obviously when he got there, not one, not two, not three, and then they win, 2 in a row, and then everybody thinks, they got an easy 3-peat, and then that happens. I mean, yeah, it was – Boris Diaw played phenomenal. Patty Mills. The team just moved the ball so well, just nonstop movement, played so hard. The international style of basketball, just sharing the ball constantly was awesome to watch. And, it kind of showed you that that was the fraction of the Heat. Those guys still liked each other, but LeBron and Wade and, were kind of ISO individual players, guys that unbelievable great talents, but they, they're post-up players. They were guys that got there by brute force, and the Spurs were, instead this model of kind of just constant movement and screening and cutting and all that. And, it was beautiful basketball to watch. And, yeah, incredibly impressive to me.
Yeah, that Spurs team was something special. Now, speaking of which, so we were talking about the Last Dance. We were talking about the best team of the last 10 years. What's the best NBA team of the last 30 years? That's the conversation that everybody is thinking about nowadays with Michael Jordan. And I guess if you think the last 30 years, it's probably of all time at that point, because I guess there's some Celtics teams before that. But I think the modern era, there's just another level of fitness. But I don't know. What's the best team of the last 30 years, and are they the best team of all time?
Great question. Yeah, I'm so bad. It's because I hate just picking single teams. Maybe the Bulls 72 win team I think has a great claim to it. People that saw Russell and those Celtics teams play obviously think they have a good shot at best of all time. But how do you contextualize that or put them into today's era? You'd be hard pressed, I think, to find a team with as much talent as Steph, Clay, Draymond, and KD. When you had a team that won 73 games was as good as they are, and add KD to it. I mean, I think they just had an obscene amount of talent. So yeah, I think I'd probably go most likely that Bulls 72 win season, but there's a lot of contenders.
Yeah, I think the Bulls team is the sticking point, and it wasn't even before even the Last Dance. I had to think, that Bulls team. I remember watching as a kid. They're just so unstoppable. You knew that Jordan, if there was any trouble, Jordan at the end of the game was going to win the game. And as a Heat fan, I never felt that way watching LeBron. I didn't know for a fact LeBron was going to pull it out at the end. And when we really needed a shot at the end of one game, Ray Allen was the guy that had to take the shot. And I'm not trying to hate on LeBron. He's obviously an amazing player, but there's just nothing like the end of the game, Michael Jordan's going to have the ball. There's no feeling like that except in another sport like Tom Brady.
Yeah, no, I mean, and LeBron, to be honest, LeBron's my greatest of all time because of his, how long he's been able to do it for is unbelievable to me. But yeah, I mean, he's not MJ in terms of just a pure scorer, a guy that just, wants the ball at the end of the game and you think a shot's going in probably 90% of the time. And, I think, like I said, Kobe's, to me, the third best of all time, but the people that prefer him over LeBron, I mean, the case is that Kobe and MJ, those two were incredibly close to each other. Kobe's the closest thing we'll ever see to MJ in terms of playing style. I mean, he copied 90% of the guy's moves, So LeBron, he's just a totally different player. I mean, he's a blend of, Magic Johnson and Oscar Robertson and shoots the ball better than any of those guys did, especially from three, MJ and Kobe included. So all incredibly unique talents. But yeah, LeBron, the knock on him early in his career, he didn't really have a jump shot, and he's at times he's had a reluctancy to take those big shots. So he's dispelled a lot of it, and like I said, I have the utmost respect because he's the greatest of all time to me. But I do get sometimes why people aren't thrilled or will give him some jabs offensively because his game's not as complete as like MJ's and Kobe's were in terms of footwork and tough shot making and the fadeaways and all that they had. That's not really a huge part of LeBron's game.
Well said, extremely well said. That's a balanced take on LeBron that I think a lot of people don't have. And that's why Scout with Bryan, I think if you go on Twitter and you're looking for basketball analysis, there's no finer analysis than from our man Bryan here. What I love to do on this show is a word association game. I throw out a name. You got to give me one word as fast as you can. Just what comes to your head when you hear a name. So usually I do it with politics. I've done it with sports once. I think we're going to mix it up with you. We're going to give you some politics, some sports. Just give me one word on some controversial names. First name, Elon Musk.
Visionary.
Joe Biden.
I wish I could elaborate because some people will crush me, I know, but I'll say weak at this point.
Russell Westbrook.
Ferocious competitor. Oh, that's 2 words, sorry.
Kyrie Irving.
Unfinished.
Anthony Fauci.
How do I do this in one word? I mean, the main word I would use is expert. There's a lot of qualifiers with it, but the main word I would use.
Bill Gates.
Suspect.
Very suspect, yes. I agree. Kanye West.
Genius.
George W. Bush.
Pushover.
Donald Trump.
How do I say in one word? Smarter than people give him credit for.
Smarter than the average bear. I think we'll put hyphens in it, and that's one word. We'll take it. That's fine. What are 3? I always ask people on this show, I say, what are 3 things you want Donald Trump to do right now? Because I think he's one of the most responsive presidents in American history. I think when people tell him on social media what he needs to do with a loud enough push, a loud enough voice, he gets the message and he actually responds and does things. So what are 3 things you want Donald Trump to do if you had the power? Donald Trump, take care of this.
Well, first of all, maybe from even a slightly selfish perspective, I would say we probably need another stimulus, especially with the government being so restrictive and not letting people get back to work in these states has caused, I think, a ton of people to need a little more help. So I think we need another round of that. And it sounds like I think at least there's been agreements of it. But yeah, I mean, the idea that the mainstream seems to think, oh, the government's just going to pay for us to stay at home for 4 months and not work. No, they're going to give you $1,200 so far for a long period of time, which is not enough. So I think we need another round of that. I would like him to start like holding briefings again. At least I know he's been having them like in some form, but I don't know, maybe on like a little more regular of a schedule, at least once or twice a week of like big ones that are considered real coronavirus recovery, whatever you want to call it, briefings. Where he gets up there, and even if the networks won't carry it or some of them won't, like he reaches obviously a huge crowd online, and speak candidly about which states need to open up. Have accountability, have Mnuchin out there to discuss what we have to do for the economy. Fauci and Birx occasionally when there's legitimate new things we've learned about the virus, or to occasionally calm people down and remark on has the curve flattened, or did we do what we set out to do? Like I think people need to just like hear it explained concisely, right? Or just be reminded, because there's so much trust in like them nationally over Trump. People trust, or at least in mainstream, Fauci and Birx and science and whatever. So if those people got up and said, look, the goal was to flatten the curve and give us time, and we've done that, I think that would help us, more of America, have confidence in reopening safely. So I'd like to see a little more of, again, just like out in public and doing things that are very visible on Twitter and answering questions, so on and so forth. And last thing I wrote down, was laying off some of the wacky shit. I know a lot of it's a distraction. I know, some of it ends up being true, but he's obviously gone pretty deep in the woods on like some of the, conspiracy theories, and, some of the retweets I think get a little too reckless of accounts that are, just completely unhinged, or accounts that are even trolling him and he doesn't realize. And, I think the only thing that could ever, legitimately like undermine him or give anybody any sort of power, like which is never going to happen, but like people calling for him to be kicked off Twitter, is to do, enough of these things where you're retweeting, decades old cold cases and calling for investigations and whatever. Some of the stuff I think he just needs to calm down about a little bit. I'm still kind of just shocked at this point. There's nobody like in his circle that he has enough trust in to like give final approval, at least for like the sake of proofreading a tweet, or just making sure that the account that he's retweeting isn't a white supremacy, whatever it is, like just, a final check on some of the tweets, I think would help a lot, despite, that I do appreciate the candor and, the fact that he's, I think, more honest than a lot of obviously the mainstream media.
I think what you're saying reminds me of something Mike Cernovich says a lot in regards to John Jones, the UFC fighter, who he calls, I think, the greatest of all time. And he says the only guy that can ever beat John Jones is John Jones. He might have said Fedor is the greatest of all time. I'm not sure. But in regards to John Jones, he says the only guy that could ever beat him is himself. And I think that applies to Trump, too. But Trump can't be beaten by the media. He can't be beaten by the Democrats. But he can definitely beat himself when he makes the wrong moves. I see that for sure. As far as him tweeting about Joe Scarborough, I love that stuff because they've been saying all kinds of nasty things about Trump for years now. He works for Putin. He's a Russian agent. There's a tape of him with Russian hookers peeing on him. And we don't know. We don't know if it's true, but we're just asking the question. So I think it's totally fair for him to ask similar questions of his biggest critics. And there's a lot more evidence that, Joe Scarborough did kill an intern than some of the crazy things they say about Donald Trump. So I think it's totally fair for him to return fire.
Yeah, no, you probably know more about that than me. And yeah, I didn't look too deeply into that one in particular. I just saw, obviously the letter that the spouse had written, was, I feel for him if he really obviously strongly believes that, there was nothing more to it. But yeah, I mean, you might be right that certainly that they have not been fair to him, and maybe some of it is just like a game to him to get back at them. But yeah, I don't know too much about the case itself. Maybe I do need to look into it a little bit more.
All right, this is a super early question. We haven't even finished this season yet in the NBA, but I wanted to ask you before you go, who do you think the top contenders are next year? I mean, thinking about the Warriors getting Clay and Steph back, and it seems like they're going to have like a top 3 or top 5 or whatever pick from the Timberwolves. I don't know what you think they're going to do with that. Some people think they'll be able to pull off a trade. I have no idea. And they've got Wiggins sitting there. I don't know if they're going to, I guess they're stuck with Wiggins now. I don't know. Some people think that's good. Some people think that's bad. What do you think of the top contenders next year? Do you think the Heat will be able to trade for somebody like Bradley Beal? What do you see happening in the deep future of NBA 2021?
If they can, they're for sure the favorites. I was going to even mention them without him, honestly. I mean, I just think that team having enough time together with Jimmy and Bam and Hero's development from year 1 to 2 and Kendrick Nunn's continual improvement. I mean, they just got so many weapons. Duncan Robinson's going to be the best, maybe undrafted player in a long time.
We love that. We love this analysis. This is awesome. Keep going.
He's awesome. Yeah. No, I think they would probably be the team out of the East that that I think has the best immediate future. Even Milwaukee. I mean, they don't have they have the questions of Giannis leaving kind of lingering, and don't have really young prospects like the Heat do that have really developed. So yeah, East, I'd take them, and then West. I think like you said, I think Golden State probably would be the favorite, but either way, that big 3 of Golden State and the LA teams is unreal, and probably the best 3 teams in basketball next season. And beyond that, I mean, one team I'll give you that's not like a huge sleeper, but I think Utah has always been right on the cusp, and that they could even make a real push this season, but they had Bojan Bogdanovic decided to get surgery, so he's out for the playoffs, which is a huge blow to them. But when they come back, Conley had a really poor season. When he's a really good player normally, I thought he was kind of missing piece, solid point guard that they needed. On top of Mitchell's a star. Gobert obviously is a top defensive player in the league. Ingles is great. The really solid team, phenomenal coach. So I think they'll bounce back pretty strong again too, and could make another push for next season.
I thought Utah would have a strong year. I think a lot of people did, but they are so snake bit between Gobert, putting his mouth near microphones or whatever he did and picking up coronavirus, and then maybe giving it to Mitchell and now them fighting. And like you said, Bojan getting surgery, he's out for the year. Joe Ingles talking about, not flying on a plane unless everything's safe or whatever he's talking about. That is the most snake bit team in the year, the most snake bit team in the league. And I think, I don't know, I sometimes draw, dots that might not connect, draw lines to dots that don't connect. But I think there's something with they voted in Mitt Romney, one of the biggest, snakes in the NBA, and snakes in the Senate, and then now they have the most snake-bitten team in the NBA. I just feel like there's some kind of karma that Utah is getting punished for.
Could be karma, but I saw some of their fans tweeted at me saying, "Oh, they got this great core, and they're gonna, the way they get over the top, they're gonna attract some huge free agents." No free agent is ever exciting in Salt Lake City. I'm sorry, I don't know if you've been there, but there's not many, not very diverse, I'll say, and it's not a big destination, and they certainly have been snake bit, like you said. But I don't know. I hope Quinn Snyder can get over the top because he deserves a lot of credit.
I think one of the last things I want to ask you about is Reddit NBA. For people that don't know, I think it might be the biggest NBA chat board on the internet, Reddit NBA. And I used to go to ESPN.com every day to get my news, see what the stories are. And then eventually the fan board on Reddit just overtook it. You want to know who's being signed, who's being traded, what the updates are, what the scores are. You're way better off going to Reddit NBA than ESPN. And then at a certain point, Reddit NBA, it just had this whole leftist weird vibe, and they just start putting like political posts tangentially related to basketball, but like things like Obama shakes hand with an NBA player, and like that gets up to the top. And if you say anything bad against Obama, it's like, oh, we got to ban you for speaking out on this NBA board because you're talking politics on a post that's about Obama or something like that. It's like it's such Orwellian doublespeak from the moderators at RNBA. It's like this Chinese communist run board that is like supposedly about the NBA, but it's got all these weird undercurrents at this point. Do you want to say anything about RNBA?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I got a story about them too that now makes more sense because I wasn't even aware of that stuff. I mean, I get all my stuff. My platform is basically Twitter. I get my news from Oj and Zach Lowe and scroll through tweets. And I don't really go on Reddit, but I did do 3 AMAs myself, which they were cool about. And, I thought I had some really good questions and good engagement and a lot of people that were really interested and, asked great questions for the 3 AMAs I did. But what was wild to me is, I kept trying to like do a 4th because I hadn't done one in a long time. And I reached out to the woman that had, like set them up for me. And first I did this like really weird thing where I did an AMA that like nobody showed up at because they like hit it like in some weird place that I did nothing for me and was just bad experience. And so then I told them like, can I do like what I did the first 3 times? And they basically said that you're too controversial, or you're too much of a lightning rod, or people have mixed feelings about you. So I was like, wow, because some people don't like me. I had 3 AMAs where nothing controversial happened whatsoever. I didn't say anything offensive. It was, my only interactions with you all have been positive and respectful and, perfectly human. That you're going to like basically ban me from doing chats because some people don't like me. And on top of that, like you said, I mean, I think some of it was like the moderators there who I don't know who they are. Like they've never spoken to me personally. Some of them I know for a fact were those same people who like thought that I had this burner defending myself and fell for like the literal people that were trolling me. Like I got banned from the Milwaukee Bucks Reddit because the moderator literally is like some nut job that thinks that I was like had my own burner. I have DMs in my Reddit that said like, lol your Twitter burners or something like this is why you're banned from the Reddit forum. I was like, what are you talking about? So yeah, it doesn't surprise me. And I think that's, kind of like sports media today. I mean, there's some good apples and there's some people who do a good job, but like any site, like ESPN, like CNN, even if they have 2, 3, 4, whatever, great reporters, great people, when you get so big and you have 50 cooks in the kitchen or 100 or 1,000 verified people, whatever it is, like so many different voices talking for you, it just becomes so hard to like control the quality of it. And you end up having some people who end up just power tripping and thinking they, know everything because they have this position or whatever, and they're just clueless, So yeah, I liked Reddit. I enjoyed my AMAs, but that's not all that surprising, especially, since I've been effectively cut off for, I guess, being controversial occasionally.
Yeah, if you say that men are better than women at basketball on RNBA, you're posting hate speech. Okay, there's if you put anything on there that has to do with reality and it's not specifically about basketball and you're telling the truth, RNBA is mad at you. You're controversial. Oh, we can't have you back, Brian. You said 1 + 1 = 2. That's not allowed. You have to say it equals 3.
Ironically, the men beating women thing is, what got me in trouble in the first place. And yeah, it was just such an eye-opening experience to how delusionally woke Twitter is, to the point of like, in my apology, like I apologized and said it was like tone deaf to share, but I said like, no, my intent was just like, like the top 200 or 300, 500, whatever it is, men, could beat the Williams sisters. It's just, a fact of reality because of, they're serving 150 miles an hour versus 90. And Serena Williams has even admitted this. And I had there was some women's tennis journalist who came to my defense and was like, no, he's absolutely right. And people went nuts on me for saying that. Absolutely nuts that I would say that they couldn't beat some people were like, oh no, she could beat any man or the top 10 men or Billie Jean King. Billie Jean King was, playing a 60-year-old. That was it was a show. Like, I mean, yeah, we've gotten too woke.
Yeah, when they do now the greatest tennis player of all time discussions, and people are like, oh, Federer or Nadal or Sampras or Rod Laver, whoever, and then some people go nuts and they're like, no, it's Serena. You're not even saying Serena. You're this and that. It's like, well, she might be the greatest women's player of all time, but if Serena played not Pete Sampras, not Roger Federer, if she played Karsten Brash, I think was his name, which, like you say, actually happened. Some like cigarette smoking like French guy just like, played her and Venus a set each, and he whomped both of them. And he wasn't even like top 100 in the world. Like, to say that she's the greatest of all time, she would not beat anybody on the men's tour. Nobody. She wouldn't beat them.
Yeah. No, but she's admitted that. And yeah, you're still not allowed to say it.
Yeah, but you're a bad person and you hate women if you say anything like reality, Brian. So remember that. Remember, never to speak the truth, or our NBA will be very, very mad at you. This has been a lot of fun, Brian. Thank you for coming on today, bro.
No, I've really enjoyed it. Appreciate you having me.
I put the link in the description on the Facebook page, and everywhere this goes, they'll have a link for you. Where should people find Scout with Brian? What are you up to? Tell people all about yourself, brother.
Yeah, pretty much just wherever you type in Scout with Brian, Brian with a Y, you'll find me. Twitter, Instagram, podcast, YouTube channel, Scout with Brian podcast. Yeah, type in Scout with Brian online, and you'll find my stuff.
Are you still going to be live commentating on games? I know during the season you were doing a little bit like, the announcing is so bad on NBA games a lot of times these days. I don't even want to listen to it, but I want to hear the crowd noise just because the announcers are so bad. But I know you're doing live announcing, basically, analysis on these games. Are you going to be doing that when the playoffs start up?
Yeah, definitely planning on it. Yeah, that's another cool thing. I think is in my Twitter bio or something. But yeah, there's this cool app called Hot Mic, Hot MIC. And if you download it, it's pretty cool. It's like Shazam. You like hold your phone up to your TV. It'll like pick up what channel you're listening to, and then like superimpose my audio over the broadcast, completely synced up. So you could be like watching a game on ESPN, but just basically have my audio replace it and stream to your smart speaker or whatever. So yeah, if you download that Hot Mic app, and I think use code SCOUT, totally free, and definitely planning on jumping on a bunch of playoff games, hopefully.
That's dope. I want to do that with you at least for 1 or 2 games. That'd be so awesome, bro. That'd be a lot of fun.
For Heat game. It's perfect.
Yeah, for my Heat, baby. That's awesome. All right, Brian, thank you for coming on. If you're still watching at this point, that means you love my content. So go to my website, theandrewmeyer.com. You can check out my book, Don't Tase Me Bro, Real Questions, Fake News, and My Life as a Meme. It is written like Harry Potter, a page-turning story, but it tells you the truth about what happened to me, why the media lies about people so often, and what's really going on in the world. It's really the story of the last 10 years. It's an awesome book, a short read for our low attention span generation. Check it out at theandrewmeyer.com. Scout with Bryan Oringher, thank you for being on today, bro.
Thank you for having me.